Okay, so let's look at the improvements we've been making to how Parsley resolves tag names to actual Vote dynamic elements. And when I say resolving tag names, I mean how is it resolving this string here in an inline tag or this string here in a Vote file, because we resolve those the same way, to an actual dynamic element to render. And to understand why we're doing this, let's start by looking at how this worked in the old VoOGNL environment. So here we have something in VoOGNL called the VoHelper function tag registry, and this is where VoOGNL would construct a map, which was basically mapping the tag names to the dynamic element to render. So for str, you'll be rendering VoString. Project Wonder further complicates this by registering patch elements through a different mechanism, saying that, well, if you request a VoString, I will actually be rendering an ERX VoString instead. So it's doing kind of the same thing in a bit of a more hacky way, and to make things worse, this is only visible to the runtime. The template editor has no idea about these replacements that's been made. So to actually see or configure that for VoLibs, you would have to do that in a separate location in the preferences, and in the inline binding shortcuts specify that the str tag would be referencing a VoString element. And if you're using Project Wonder, this isn't even quite correct, because this would be resolving to an ERX VoString. So what we really need is a single place for both the application and the template editor to obtain the tag names the application actually uses. And that's what we've been trying to introduce in Parsley, currently through this file here called the Parsley tag aliases properties. This can be introduced either in a framework, a library, or an application. And it's a simple file that just declares this is the tag name, and this will be resolving to this element here. And the element name can be either a simple element name, it can be another tag, so you can, it's hierarchically resolved in the end, or it can be a fully qualified class name if you're registering patch classes like Wonder, as seen here. So if we look at the registration of the str tag, you will see that the core is going to be resolving that to a VoString. ERExtensions defines its own override that VoString actually resolves to ERX VoString. And in the template itself, we can see that the whole chain gets resolved in the end, declared by the application and the framework, and resolved to the actual element that gets rendered. Now, if we'd like to add a fourth override for ERX VoString in our application, I can go here and I'll just create my own element class, create a new class called myString, so we're original, and just make it extend Vote dynamic element because we won't be using this. I create a new file in resources called Parsley tag aliases properties, and in there I'll be declaring that ERX VoString is overwritten by myString. Now let's look again at the API. I hover, and it shows me that we've changed what element will get rendered for VoStr. I'm still showing the documentation from the nearest element that has any documentation, which is VoString, because ERX VoString doesn't have documentation. And same applies if I'd like to add my own custom tags. So I'll just create a new tag called myString, and I'll be mapping that to myString as well. And I'm getting that in my tag completion. So, what this essentially means is that applications can now define their own tag vocabulary, giving information about which elements actually get rendered when you use certain tags. And that's kind of nice. Yay.